Throughout Japanese history, there have been many instances where mystical movements and folk legends became closely intertwined with political events. One of the most enigmatic and dramatic episodes of the 20th century was the scandal surrounding a woman named Aoi Nakajima, who in the 1930s claimed to be the reincarnation of the ancient Empress Seko, who ruled in the early 15th century. This case shocked Tokyo, drawing attention both within Japan and internationally, sparking a whirlwind of debates among politicians, religious leaders, and intellectuals. The appearance of Nakajima. Aoi Nakajima was born in 1900 in a provincial family in Kobe. In her youth, she developed an interest in Shintoism and occult teachings. After graduating from a private Catholic school, she quickly became involved in mystical circles, which were gaining popularity in Japan at the time. In 1930, Nakajima declared that she had made contact with the spirits of the past and began preaching that she was the incarnation of Empress Seko, a legendary ruler whose name had become a symbol of spiritual renewal and Japan's prosperity. At first, her revelations were seen as eccentric, but as Aoi began to gather followers, the situation changed. Soon, among her supporters were not only ordinary citizens, but also officers of the Japanese military and members of the aristocracy. Nakajima claimed that her mission was to restore the spirit of Japan, return to ancient traditions, and revive the divine order that had been lost in the age of Western influences. The path to popularity. Aoi attracted widespread attention by speaking at public gatherings and organizing mass rallies. She used religious rituals and mystical practices to create an image of a woman with supreme spiritual authority. Some of her followers believed that her words were divine revelations, and they began calling her the voice of Seko. This cult quickly gained popularity among the nationalist segment of the Japanese population, who were looking for symbols of ancient greatness in response to the economic crisis and the looming threat of Western domination. Aoi claimed that her goal was not only the spiritual renewal of Japan, but also the restoration of the sacred power of the imperial family, which, according to her, had been weakened by political and external changes. With her speeches about returning to traditional values, supporting the military, and enhancing the emperor's power, many began to see her as an alternative to the existing political leadership. Symbolism and controversies. One of the main arguments of Nakajima's supporters was her claim to be a descendant of the ancient Empress Seko. This assertion sparked fierce debates among historians and the aristocracy, but Aoi's influence continued to grow. She continued to gather thousands of people at rallies, where she spoke of the revival of Japan's glory through a return to true culture and spirituality. However, despite her growing popularity, many began to question her sincerity and intentions. Particularly concerned were high-ranking officials who were uncomfortable with her rising influence, especially as she openly challenged the existing political order. Soon, rumors began circulating that Nakajima might be the secret daughter of a high-ranking member of the imperial family, which only added a mystical layer to her persona. The government's response. As the scandal surrounding Nakajima escalated, the authorities decided to intervene. Prime Minister Makoto Saito, alarmed by the growing influence of this woman and the cult surrounding her, ordered an investigation. Nakajima found herself at the center of a political struggle as she was accused of fraud, manipulation of the public, and political conspiracy. She was arrested, and her followers faced harsh persecution. During her trial, Aoi Nakajima did not admit to any criminal activity, claiming that her preaching was a sincere attempt to awaken the spirit of ancient Japan. In response to charges of financial misconduct, she argued that all the funds raised at her rallies were intended for the restoration of the nation's spiritual power and to help the poor. the fall and exile. In March 1935, Nakajima was sentenced to 3 years in prison and later exiled to one of the remote islands of the Ryukyu archipelago. Her political opponents seized on this situation to eliminate her cult completely. Meanwhile, newspaper articles began to appear, claiming that Nakajima had used religious symbols and ancient mythology merely to manipulate the masses and seize power. Aftermath and legacy. After Nakajima's imprisonment, the cult around her and the idea of the revival of Seko gradually disappeared from the public eye. However, for some of her followers, this was not the end, but rather the beginning of a new phase. Nakajima left behind not only memories of a mysterious reincarnated empress, but also traces of how, in difficult times, the people could seek not only political, but also spiritual support in their leaders. Rumors about Nakajima's possible connection to high circles in Japan continued to circulate in secretive circles, and her story became a symbol of how personal ambitions and religious symbolism could intersect with political games, leading to the destruction of established systems.